Hello, everyone. Thank you, of course, for inviting me to this conference. I'm really excited to talk about international knowledge exchange on climate adaptation with a focus on integrated infrastructure development. It's very nice to see so many great speakers in the program. I'm very glad that from the Hanze University of Groningen, which is in the Netherlands, we could be part of the organization as a collaborator. So, what is very difficult, of course, with a keynote is this is such a great conference. There's so many topics. It's so multidisciplinary. So what do you choose as a topic that could address anyone? So I choose knowledge exchange, international knowledge exchange, being from the Netherlands. But maybe I should introduce. I'm a professor at Groningen, which is high up in the Netherlands, below sea level, by the way. I'm also an affiliated researcher at the Global Center of Adaptation, and I also work at Deltares in this case. I do a lot of international projects. I will show something of that later. Maybe my unique selling point would be that all my jobs are below sea level. So if the dikes would break, I would probably look for a great position in Indonesia, of course. So, um, what one what do I want to tell? I think, of course, let's start. This is one of the first presentations. So about the challenges, what to address with sustainable infrastructure. I want to show you very briefly about 101 projects on the international exchange, of course, and the partnerships there. Let's focus on solutions, and especially, do we learn from all these projects, from all these solutions? Where can we find these solutions when projects are finished? I think that's one of the key elements. As Friedrich Hegel said, we learn from history that we don't learn from history. And I think that's a very important point. And I want to address you because what do you actually want, or how can you participate? So I'm going to be very practical. I'm going to show you two tools that you can use with partners, of course, but also on your own online. And I'm going to address the last parts with where can you find more info. But first, challenges. There are a lot of them. This is about climate adaptation, but because of course we have extensive rainfall, floodings. We have also drought because water management in the cities could be a lot better. We have higher temperatures that will increase in the future. That has an effect also on the air quality, the water quality. So you can see a lot of pictures here that are, of course, addressing climate adaptation. But it's not only about climate adaptation. Cities as Jakarta are expanding more and more. So we need a new green infrastructure, for example, to save our lives with biodiversity, heat stress, and all those challenges that we have. So, of course, this is not new. We have also, what I didn't tell you is about if we have drought or groundwater extraction that could tap into a lower groundwater table and subsidence of cities, sinking cities, so to say. Jakarta is one. Of course, Rotterdam is one. A lot of cities actually in the Netherlands below sea level. So these are things that we can address. And I want to address some things that we can do, me from Holland, you from Indonesia or Malaysia, there where we can address these challenges and learn from each other. And of course, being in Indonesia, you can see by my shirt, a batik shirt from Semarang. Of course, I've been in Indonesia addressing some of these problems like water quality, as you can see here, batik on the right, the floodings, as you can see. It's very appealing to me to do something about it and do knowledge exchange. Just going to show you some pictures, some of the projects here. It's about subsidence, lack of awareness, drought, ecology. And of course, it's also about governance. It's also about social science. It's about technical science. So I'm really glad that we have this international conference. So enough about challenges. Then what can we learn from all these partnerships and the projects that we have? I'm just going to browse through these pictures. Probably you recognize there's a lot of logos on it. There's projects from where I was involved with from 2014, for example, all over Dutch newspapers, all over Indonesian newspapers or Malaysia or international, of course. It's about taking measurements. It's about communication. You see a lot of people that are getting training so they know how to analyze an area. It's about field trips. You see a lot of logos again with water authorities like Jasa Tirta. Again, going on boats, visiting the field sites, then disseminate all that knowledge on big congresses. And then you get in a newspaper, and then you have a different batik shirt, and then you have even more logos and people attending, and you talk about polder systems, for example, in Semarang, which is, some of the knowledge that we have in the Netherlands, of course, because it happened to us already 300 years ago, and even more exchange with universities. And we saw some pictures of water quality that could be better, to use an euphemism. And of course, it's about water quantity, it's about water quality, it's about fish almost dying maybe, and of course getting action, because we know the challenges. We just want to team up, as you can see in these pictures. We want to make living labs, so stakeholders are involved as well. We call it a triple helix, because education, research, partners from public and private entities should be involved. So basically, we have a lot of projects. But did we learn from them? That was quite fast, but I think you get the idea. So what can we learn from all these projects and partnerships that a lot of you were involved, and you could find yourself in the pictures, I think. What can we learn? Well, basically, and that's a no-brainer, we start with analyzing the situation. So all these pictures that I've shown are, of course, the basis of analyzation, because it's not only about the technical analyzation that you can find here in rivers, and then you look for the ambition. You want clean water, for example, or fighting drought or floodings, but it's all about action. And it's very good that in the beginning, what you saw from all these pictures, it is action. It is action. You could say, okay, you talk a lot, but what do you do? Basically, it's about education. It's raising awareness. It's building trust and networks, because without that, you should not start with implementing measures or solutions in this case. So a first step is also capacity building. Train the trainer. And in those pictures, what you saw, you see people teaching, exchanging knowledge, and of course that's very, very, very important. And with climate adaptation, it's a big challenge. So be aware, and be also realizing that we have to get used to more intensive stormwater events, some floodings, and because we cannot solve everything. It's really out of our hands. We are taking over the earth at places that we shouldn't be. Maybe we're really taking over. So we should change stuff, and that's nice. But how do we adapt? How can we learn? What kind of projects are already out there? What does work? What are the best management practices in this case? What we find. And those are some tools that I want to show you. And these are some projects, and I'm just now focusing on the Netherlands, Indonesia, basically Asia, where you can find some of the inspiration that you might need. And then you can decide yourself if you find this attractive, or that it's cost effective to implement in the city as well, anywhere in the world, basically. So if we address very tangible projects, one thing that I'm involved with, and is of course quite on a high agenda for a lot of partners, is if we talk about climate adaptation, it's about too much water, too less water. And if we make amphibious or floating infrastructure, it doesn't matter if it's too high, because it will go up with the water, or if it's too low, it will just go to the land. So that's amphibious. If it stays in the water, it's floating. And there are a lot of Dutch examples, as you can see here on the left, floating homes in Amsterdam, our capital. And of course, we learned a lot from some of the projects that you have actually in Indonesia or Asia, for that case, like floating solar panels, floating libraries, as you can see here. I had the privilege to be in a floating restaurant. It was very nice. So I think we change the infrastructure to be more sustainable. So we change from gray infrastructure maybe to floating infrastructure, more flexible infrastructure, and also green infrastructure. Because tapping into this, you see in cities, We have more asphalt. We have more paving. Green doesn't get any chance anymore as the trees here on the left. It seems like if a rainfall comes, it doesn't infiltrate to the ground anymore as in the old days. We used to prevent water from going in, and that of course taps into subsidence. That's why groundwater levels drop, because we pump it up. And I think this is an essential thing to go from gray infrastructure, which is mostly stormwater drainage, for example, we go to more green and a green infrastructure, as these wonderful artists sketched here. So we have to open up pavement. We have to use green for storage of water, for infiltration. And that's not an easy task. Because if you look at pictures here, one is Sao Paulo on the right, and we have New York, Manhattan, you can see a lot of gray, and it's not integrated. So one of the things that we should do now is to make cities greener, to face climate adaptation. And here are some great examples around the world, but does it fit? If you are in Malaysia, can I implement this or not? And of course, there's so many technical implementations already around the world that can be very inspiring for you to see if this fits. And of course, it's totally different locations, it's totally different governance, but it can be used as inspiration. And that's why analyzing, forming your ambition, and action is very important. And don't wait for action after talking about analyzing your area and forming the ambition. It's very good to do that interactive. And I really hope that we can learn from mistakes that others make. Because even in the Netherlands, we had a lot of implementations of gray infrastructure. You know, you see the water quality, we have to use wastewater treatment plants, so big concrete structures, which are very expensive and need a lot of maintenance. And now we gather more information about nature-based solutions. Can we purify the water by using nature, which is sometimes more effective and also cost-effective because it has a higher removal efficiency rate sometimes. And it can also be used because this right picture that you might see here in the corner, you see people walking through a park. It's actually a wastewater treatment plant. So that can be very inspirational. And what I try to form here with this, we spend a lot of money to this. And having this knowledge, maybe we can have an Indonesian or Malaysian or Asian shortcut to effective solutions right away that will cost less time and less money. So nice. But what do you want to hear? What is essential for you? I'm just going to show you two tools, Climate Scan and Climate Cafe, and then I'm going to leave again, of course, which might be essential for your use. And I'm just going to go through it rapidly because it's easy for you to find more information. And it's based on some workshops I did with a lot of colleagues and partnerships, which you saw in the beginning in Indonesia, mostly in Surabaya and Semarang in this case. What did we find out? Workshop results, it's all published. You will find publications later. We found that there is a very strong urge to need more information about green infrastructure and maybe bioswales, rain gardens, constructed wetlands in particular. And of course, there are already some of the implementations. And also the lessons learned from other countries, the success stories, what can we implement, has been harvested in these workshops that you can see here. So I focus a bit on this to end up my presentation. So one of the things, there are a lot of tools that you can use and be interactive. One of them is Climate Scan. It's one of the global climate adaptation networks or platforms that you can actually find. I'm going to focus on that. And there's a lot of materials that you could use. If you're interested in nature-based solutions, you probably know this document. And it shows that Climate Scan ticks a lot of boxes, even more boxes here, which you can find. But what is it? Climate Scan is a database that you can feed, that you can use for finding inspirational projects all around the world. It has over 6,000, actually over 7,000 already. It has over 1,000 registered users, a lot of them from Asia as well. And you can, with your app, you can upload a lot from your projects that you want to share. And this is a tutorial, I'm not going to show it, but if you're interested, you can provide your projects. So what's on there? Well, basically pages with videos like this, with very simple implementation that don't cost a lot of money and energy for you to use. Rain gardens on the right, some lower pavement on the left, which is quietly used. And who are those people around the world that actually are uploading things? Well, a lot of different people, as you can see here. And maybe focusing more on the Asian part, this is all the info you can find. So many projects around the world. There are a lot of pictures. You can see downloads. You can see research papers, which is interesting for me, of course, as a researcher. So you can look down to solutions, but also sometimes problem areas are mapped. For example, these aluminum ash is being used as a building material, and there's not a lot of knowledge on the effect of water quality, for example. So what does it do? It's multifunctional, yes, but has it an effect as an outlet, like a discharge from wastewater? Will it leach metals? It's not really known. And then, of course, we have to use maybe some purification, some basic purification principles, as you can see here. So, and these are some information, some projects from around the world that you can find here. A lot of actually Indonesian solutions already that are uploaded, probably by you or a colleague of you, on floating urbanization or bioswales or green roofs. And there's always like this link that you can find and find more info. And of course, I started up with all these projects from Connecting the World, being a solution broker that the Global Center of Adaptation does. So you can find these projects here and find more information and read about it. And it's not only a place on the map. It has also some data, water quality data, which is harvested by underwater drones that you saw. And this data can be used as researchers to analyze cities, Dutch cities, but also cities around the world like Copenhagen and Malmö and Johannesburg. And we're starting up to do analyzation of Asia now, to see what's already out there for cities, well, all around the world, but a focus on Asia, and we did some publications about it. So, so I hope that helps and hopes that stimulates you to upload some projects as well, because that's of course mostly online. But there's last but not least also Climate Scan in practice, and that is linked to Climate Cafe. And maybe you heard of it. If you're in research, there are a lot of publications about it. You can find here. You can tap into it's all open source, so you can find more inspiration about it. But basically, it's, and I focus now on Asia again, platform and tools all around the world. It's learning by doing methodology. We go out in the field and research, for example, floating urbanization or green infrastructure. And then we use all that new knowledge to share with you on a Climate Cafe itself, if you're a participant, but you can also find that on Climate Scan. And then Climate Cafe, what is it? Well, this is all in Asia, for example. So a lot of times we go out, do measurements and disseminate that knowledge, as been said. But on climatecafe.nl, you can find climate cafes in Semarang or Surabaya or anywhere. And the basis, again, is analyzing, ambition, and action. And I find that action, being from applied sciences, the very important part, because you can form your analyzing during action, as you can see here. You can find your ambition with your stakeholders that are involved with the Climate Cafe. And that makes this a quite nice learning experience that we can do together on an international level, as you've seen there. And then we use it for, of course, books like this, because that's what researchers or professors do. They write a lot of articles, but climate adaptation is all about analyzing different things and answering questions from you. One of the questions, that's the last one, and then I'm going to leave. One of the questions was, for example, fine, you show a lot of green infrastructure from Europe, but don't forget, it's a different situation in Asia. If we store water, what will happen to malaria and dengue, etc.? Well, that's a very important question. We analyzed, of course, green infrastructure in Europe and seeing if there are risks, in this case, for example, for different incubation of mosquitoes. And that taps into guidelines. So we do research on green infrastructure to make sure that it will empty within like 7 days. If it's empty within 5 to 7 days, mosquitoes get no chance to basically distribute their loved ones, so to say, and cause diseases. So. And that's very practical, and that's I think the level of climate adaptation, the implementation of green infrastructure and floating infrastructure should be. Don't go too fast. Answer questions. Build a network, as you saw in all the pictures. I think we have gone a long way. So, take-home messages. I know it was fast, a lot of info, but I would say let's get to work. Let's go to climate action. I think we share challenges, very major challenges, but sometimes small solutions could be already part of it. And if you have a lot of them, it builds up to a very big solution strategy, so to say. Analyze, ambition, and action. More info. I showed you a lot, I think, on everything that we're gonna do this Congress as well. It's about dissemination, it's about communication, and I'm very glad, of course, that this conference can contribute a lot to this. And of course, I reviewed some papers, read a lot of papers, saw some presentations that are coming, so I'm very excited about it. And more info. Can you participate? Yes. Share your knowledge. Find us. Find us on the Climate Cafe. Find us on the Climate Scan. And I really hope that we see you there. And I'm going to leave it at this. And maybe there are some questions from you guys to answer. So thanks a lot and see you soon.